Let's have a look at DayCaptain's usability concept. This usability with the keyboard is probably the best feature of DayCaptain. Why? Because we wanted to be able to edit our tasks and events in our timeline as fast as we can think. And especially if you're a developer, you probably love typing on your keyboard. Why? Because it's just faster. So the way how we can use DayCaptain is actually more similar to a computer game or a programming editor rather than just using the mouse as you would do in a traditional application. So if you have a look at DayCaptain, you will see that there are some small keyboard hints that you actually can press in order to focus something. So that is the first thing. Instead of using your mouse, you can actually press, for example, T for focusing the tasks or R for the timeline and so on and so forth. So all of the hints that are shown to you. And then once you are focused on this, you can press some other keys on the keyboard to, for example, move around. So in this view, the so-called day view, similar to a time planner on paper, you can just move around. For example, you can change the date by focusing on the calendar and then pressing some keys. Mostly it's H, J, K, and L for moving around. So why these keys? If we have a look at a keyboard, it's actually similar to what we would do in a computer game. Why? Because if we press keys such as the cursor arrows, that is usually arrows for navigating around, we would need to change our hand position. And if we think about it, it's not that fast. It's actually faster to keep on the so-called home row if we do touch typing especially, and to instead press H, J, K, and L. It's very similar to what you would do in a computer game to just navigate around. And then we can use these keys plus some extra modifiers typically to just do some things in DayCaptain. And as we will see, there are some other mnemonic characters such as E for edit, D for delete, and so on and so forth, which are somewhat easier to remember. But the point is that we are able to press these things very fast without changing our hand position, without thinking about it. It's more like a computer game than a traditional application. So let's have a closer look in how to do this. As you can see, this day already has some tasks and some events here, and I can, for example, go to change this. I can move them around here. I can make them longer and shorter, and now we will see how to do this. So I will go to the next day by selecting the calendar with Q and then pressing L or right to change the next date. And now, assuming I would like to create some tasks. As you see here with the keyboard hint, I can add a task by clicking on this button, or I just press N twice, NN, and then I have an action here which I can use. And all of that usability is possible by the keyboard. For example, I can do some sports tomorrow, and then I can already press enter by just adding it. So you see, I don't have to use the mouse. I can just add some task, and for example, I can add another one by pressing NN again to say some Hello World task or working on my project, and then I press enter. I can also, if I press escape here with the hint, I can select some other things. For example, I have some areas and some projects and some planned time that I will learn later about. Now I just want to get rid of it, but you see that I can focus all of these things by pressing these hints. And that is typically how DayCaptain works, that we have some areas where we can focus by just pressing some specific key, and that we can make an action. It's very similar to a computer game where you just change the location to some other area and then you do some action by pressing some key. So that's the whole idea about it. At first it might sound a little bit complex, but once you get used to it, it becomes very, very natural so that you don't have to think about it anymore. So let's add this other task and then do something else. A third one, and as you can see, this is already very fast. So we only have to type. I don't have to touch my mouse. And now what I can do, well, I can, for example, change the selection here. So this is again with the selection that is similar to a cursor arrow. I can go up and down. And probably you already see also these weird numbers, 0, 1, 2, or now 1, 0, 1. These are relative jump marks where I can say, well, I could jump down by pressing down many times. And if my list is quite long, I can make this faster by prefixing this digit. For example, I say 2 and then down, like 2J or 2K, to just jump up and down. So this is quite fast. I can also press Shift G or G twice to go to the end of the list or the beginning of the list. So if you're wondering, okay, I cannot remember all these keyboard hints, that doesn't matter. You can press question mark to just get some context related keyboard keys that you can press here. So you can read, well, what is possible in this task list, or also in some other area, for example, this timeline, which other keys can I press here? So always, if you're wondering what to do, just press question mark and you will see some help here. We also think it's very important to sort all of these task lists by priority so that the most important thing is at the top where we can work on it. And how this works is you can press some modifier and Alt plus up and down plus J and K just grabs this task and moves it around. So then we can just, well, move it accordingly and then sort our list very quickly. So as you can imagine, this is much faster than taking the mouse, so we can just see what we want to have in our task list and then move it as such. Similarly, we can use another so-called modifier, Shift, to change the time. And this is the time that we want to plan for that. That becomes important for day planning. So when we say, well, we would like to work on this project for, let's say, 2 hours. So as you can see, all of that is possible quite easily as well. And let's add some events in our calendar as well, because that's typically what we want to have in our application, that we plan some time and then we have some important meeting at the time. And then we also want to add some other things and especially change them quickly. So this is the biggest feature. What we can do, similarly to what we learned, we can add a new event here by pressing N twice as well and say, for example, we have a meeting. So I can enter the name. If I press escape, then I see that now I can change some time. So that is now a little bit cumbersome. If I would go and say, for example, I could edit this here and say this is 12:15 to, for example, 14:15. And well, that's not the easiest way to just always press numbers. So what we can do instead, and if you think again of these cursors, it's very similar to a computer game. We can change this by just pressing up and down in quotes, or J and K, and left and right for 15 minutes or 60-minute jumps. So we can, for example, say, well, we would like to change this here. We can select the start time and the end time. And here you see again these keyboard hints. Now they're very helpful to see. We press D for selecting the end time, A for the start time. And if we think again of our keyboard, this is easily reachable on just our home row here, where once we get used to these hints, it's very quickly to press these for doing touch typing. So for example, that meeting should be from 2 to 3, and I press enter, and then it is inserted here in the timeline. I can also, that's even quicker, change it inline here once it is inserted. That means I can go and take this movement modifier Alt and to go in up and down and to change it for 30-minute slots or left and right for 15-minute slots, which is possible to just move the meeting somewhere else. I can also make it longer and shorter by pressing Shift again. So you see that's a similar movement to what we had in the task list. And then say, well, it should be like this from 9 to 11:45, for example. I can press E for edit again to see this information here. Again, if we forgot about the keyboard shortcuts, we can press question mark to see what is possible here. Let's add another meeting in the afternoon. And then I can also see that I can move around with J and K. And once we get used to this concept, then we see that it's quite easy to just change things here to make them longer and shorter and move around. And that is what we actually like about this usability concept, that now it becomes really easy to change things in our calendar and to quickly adapt to, well, whatever we would like to have. So it's more like writing on a piece of paper, but even more so, we can actually change things quite easily. But it becomes very natural once we get used to this concept. And now one more thing for assigning some time. For example, when we would like to work on our project now and we would like to reserve time, let's say in the morning, then I could go and drag and drop this into the timeline. I say I want to work on that from 8 to 10. And let's move our meeting accordingly. So let's say our meeting then just will be there later. And well, what we did, I could do this using the mouse, and we saw that it suggested 2 hours because I planned 2 hours, but it's actually easier. Let's delete it again using D twice for delete. It's actually easier to do this with the keyboard. So I can, let's have a look at the keyboard help. I can press NR to actually assign some time for this task. So if I press NR, then it will just suggest the time. I can move this again, and then I can assign it. And then we see that we also have some calculation here, how long we're actually working on it. And this means that we're now assigning and reserving some time in our calendar. And that is the important feature that we say, well, besides the so important meeting, I want to work on my project. That's really important to me. Or for example, to do some sports in the evening for an hour, and then I can fill my calendar accordingly. But it's very easy to do using this keyboard concept. So these are the most important concepts here. I can focus on specific areas by pressing the according keys. I can use these movement commands, mostly H, J, K, and L, to move around. I have some modifiers to move something or to change the time of something, mostly Shift and Alt. And if I don't know what to do, I can just always press question mark. That tells me what these actions are here. And at first it sounds a little bit complex, but once you get used to it, similar to a computer game, it will feel very natural, and then you can move around in your task list and your calendar much faster than if you would use the mouse, and it's much more fun to use it then.